Hello and welcome back to Code and Coffee episode 2, brought to you by the Mozilla Campus Club of SLIIT. I'm Saru Bopitia, and today we are kicking off episode 2 with the topic securing web applications. So grab your coffee and let's get started. All right, so let's go ahead with today's episode. So, all right, let's start with this now. Let's start with why security is so important. Now, in any application, you've got a backend, and it's part of your application that the users don't see, and it's where your sensitive information and your data are handled. So, this is crucial because your backend is essentially sort of like the gatekeeper for your database. And imagine this scenario: your app has a database which holds all of your users' data, and it's very sensitive as well. So it's private, and no one can, other than the user, can access it. Um, let's take example where you let any user basically access this database. So if this happens, someone could delete everything and expose all your users' private information to the outside world. That is why we have backends now. So they protect the database and control what data the users can access. Now, whether you're using server actions, React server components, TRPCs, they all share one goal, and that is to protect the data basically in the database. So when you're developing, you need to assume that anyone can hit your API. So people can use tools like Postman, curl, and even the browser to send requests. So just because something doesn't appear in the browser does not mean that it's safe. So this is a common scenario, and the first line of defense is going to be authentication. Yep, this. Now, think of it as a security officer to your workplace, right? So, only the people with valid IDs can get in. So, here's how it works: when a user logs in, they get a key, and this could be a JSON web token or a JWT, right? And this or a session ID which is stored in a cookie. So this key is like their VIP pass to get in every time they interact with your backend, and they will show this pass and they can get in. So for example, when it comes to JWTs, the server will be creating the token, and they sign it with a secret. They call it the JWT secret, and sends it to the user. So later, when the user sends request, the token is sent back to the headers. The server then verifies the token using the secret, and then if it's validated, if it checks out, if it's okay, the user can enter. If not, the user uh, will stop the access. So it's something like this, because if it is not validated, the user cannot enter, send requests, basically post requests or anything. So this is important, because if this is not validated, basically any user can interact with your database and steal your data. So this is authentication, and this is important because it tells us who the user is. But here's the next problem: just because someone's authenticated doesn't mean that they can do anything they want. So this is where authorizations comes in. Now, in authorization, let me give you this example now. Okay, so this is an example of a simple to-do list application. A user logs in, and let's say the user ID is Sairo. and they want to access to-do list number 5. Okay, and to-do list number 5 belongs to Jack, right? If there is no proper authentication setup, authorization setup, the user gets in, let's say Saru gets in, and can easily access to-do list number 5, which is not his, it's Jack's. So this is why authorization is important. Without proper authorization, your backend might just send that data to him, right? So to fix this, you can use access control list ACL as well. But the easiest sort of way is you can check the database. You can write a query, a where query, with the condition sort of like this, where user ID equals the current user ID, and it checks the database, and it will only return the items that belong to that specific user. So if the user ID is Cyrus sends a request to which is get to do list with to do number 5 which he wants to access, the request is sent to the database and it checks if to do list number 5 belongs to Cyrus. If not, it won't get passed on to the user. If Jack logs in, for example, if Jack logs in, then yeah, sure, absolutely, because to-do list number 5 belongs to Jack. Now, if you have roles set up, which in most applications they do, now in when it comes to role, basically the admin role will have access to everything, whereas the regular users will not. So they will have limited access, whereas the admins have unrestricted access to data, which is pretty common and makes sense as well. So moving on to the next big thing, which is also pretty important, but it's not, I would say, implemented in a lot most of the applications, which it should be basically, which is input validation and data sanitization. So they are very important when it comes to backend security. When a user sends the data to the backend, you can't just trust it, right? Someone could send a really long string. Someone could inject malicious code and with an attempt of crashing your system. So to prevent this, you need to always validate your inputs. Let's take this for example. Take this situation where you are interacting with a website and they ask you to subscribe and you need to enter your email. So if you have not implemented like email format validation, you can enter basically anything. The same goes for a description, right? Maybe you want to uh, get the feedback of from a customer. It's the same thing. You can enter limitations to your string in a description in text fields. So these will help to sanitize, validate, basically sanitize your backend. So it's the same thing with sanitization as well. If we take this example, which is a blog application, and when you are creator and you can basically write your own blog within that. So instead of writing a blog which is text, you write some malicious JavaScript code. So this will get stored directly onto your database. Now this is really um, bad, because someone else who is viewing your blog will actually see this, and that code will get executed. So this, we currently call it as cross-site scripting, which is a pretty big deal now. So yeah, cross-site scripting, which is pretty big, and this is very important when protecting your web applications as well. Which brings me along to the next big thing, which is rate limiting. Now, imagine a hacker or even an innocent user sending thousands of requests to your server in just a few seconds, just a matter of seconds, let's say in 2 seconds. He sends around thousands of requests, right? And this will ultimately lead to crashing your server without limits. So this could ruin the experience for everyone. So rate limiting works by tracking how many requests a user can make within a limited time frame. So you can either block them or slow them down, and you can store this data in-memory cache or Redis cache for performance, improving your performance in your application. So if we bring up to the most important sort of thing, so to sum up, I would say in order to secure your backend and your web applications, it comes up to basically mainly four, I would say, principles. And one is that you need to authenticate every request. You need to have authorization, have authorized access to your resources within your database, and you need to validate and sanitize the user inputs. And also, you need to limit how much that the user can actually interact with your server. And brings me along to this most important thing: when you are developing and building security around your web applications, always think like a hacker. How can someone abuse my application? If you think like that and if you can answer that, you will always be one step ahead of the hacker. So, on that note, let's end episode 2 of Code and Coffee. Thank you for staying till the end and stay tuned for our next episode. Goodbye from me.